We are all the way back, baby. It's game week. The 2025 college football season starts this weekend, right? We're doing a game preview on this show. Going to pick our winner in Farmageddon at the end of this thing. Before we do that, though, going to tell you what we're going to be saying at the end of this college football season. Now, we're not fast-forwarding too much. I just want us to get ahead of the script and tell you the plot for what we can expect from the 2025 college football season. But just, it feels good. It feels right. Before we got on the air here, I was talking to Caden Smith, producer of the Hard Count. This is our first show of the new season. This is our first show of the 2025 campaign. So if you have not yet subscribed, haven't yet locked in with us here on this show, the Hard Count on the On3 YouTube channel, no time like the present. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Also, follow on the socials, Instagram, Twitter, at JD PicKell. We're going to have the greatest college football season of all time, and I can't wait for it. Can't wait to have you all a part of it. It is Tuesday, August 19th, 2025, last one on the face of the planet. But as I alluded to, what are some things that we're going to be saying at the end of this season? I got a couple of headlines I want to make sure we get out ahead of. The first one being, there's a new blueprint to winning a national championship, and LSU has unlocked it. You know who unlocked it was Brian Kelly, the guy that folks have been talking down on for better part of the last decade or so as a head coach. And I say talking down in the sense of, I don't think anybody questions Brian Kelly as a good head coach in college football. They're going to be talking about him as one of the best head coaches in college football at the end of this season. Before we get to that, they'll talk about the blueprint. When you look at the previous eras of the college football postseason in terms of how you win a national championship, there's been a couple of different formulas. There's the BCS formula, which is have the best players. Pretty straightforward. Nick Saban, every single year it felt like, has the best roster, just about every single year, winning the national championship. Same thing with those Ohio State teams that won it. Same thing. You hear where I'm saying. Urban Meyer in Florida, when you have the best roster, you would win the national championship more often than not in the BCS era. Then you had the 4-team playoff formula to win a national championship, which was add some of the best players via the transfer portal. But for the most part, it's like bring back the core nucleus of what you had a year ago when you were so close to winning it the year before. Think Michigan, the unfinished business. You lose to TCU in the playoff the year before. A lot of pieces come back. Hey, I want to go win a national championship for Jim Harbaugh. You go win the whole thing and beat Washington in 2023. Then last year, Ohio State. A lot of guys that could have gone pro, right? Jack Sawyer, Tui Maloau, guys that chose to come back. And then you also go to the portal, get a Will Howard, get a Caleb Downs, kind of add to that nucleus in a pretty crucial way, go win the national championship. If and when LSU wins the national title, because I've told y'all, man, on this show, I've picked LSU very openly, very boldly, very confidently, told you I think the Tigers are going to win the national championship at the end of this season. The 12-team model formula is going to be bring back your quarterback and then add some key pieces around him in the transfer portal to make sure that you go win the national championship. I want to rewind a little bit because Ohio State, I included them in that 4-team model to win the national championship. They are, I think, in that vein, but this is going to be, I think, almost like the 2.0 of what you saw from the 4-team model, okay? Because Ohio State, they didn't bring back a quarterback. They went out and got a quarterback in Will Howard. But if I'm LSU right now, what have they done this offseason? Broke out the Amex, broke out the black card, said no limit, Brian Kelly, Austin Thomas, go crazy. Go get yourself some key pieces to maximize what you have at quarterback with Garrett Nussmeier. Because here's the deal. He's not coming back another year, man. He's here for a good time, not a long time. And across college football right now, a lot of other teams, especially in the SEC, think they have a quarterback. Don't know 110% they have a quarterback. At least we don't right now. I can't promise you Gunnar Stockton's going to be as good as Carson Beck was the last 2 years in Athens. I can't promise you Arch Manning's going to be as good as Quinn Ewers was the last 2 years in Austin. Like I wish I could tell you. If I could tell you, I'd make a lot more money in Las Vegas and bet some big bucks and pick a national champion and pick a lot of other things correctly to make sure my bank account looked better. But here's the deal. LSU, they know they have a quarterback. And with them knowing they have a quarterback, they're going to make sure that they maximize that relative to the rest of the landscape. So look at what they did via the portal. Berrien Brown, Speedster from Kentucky on the outside. Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, we've talked about him. Touchdown machine a couple years ago in Norman. On the defensive side, go get Patrick Payton from Florida State. Jack Pyburn on the edge. Like, they've done a lot across this roster to make sure it's coming down to, okay, we have a guy at quarterback. We're not going to have this conversation after the year of, well, we had a quarterback. However, if we could just have been better on defense, if we just had got him some weapons, nope, you're not saying that. You're not saying that because of what you did with this top 2 portal class that GM Austin Thomas has done a very good job assembling. It's kind of like a leave no doubt mentality. I mean, great steak restaurants do this, believe it or not. You maximize what you do best, and you don't let anything else take away from that, right? The steak is awesome. I'm not having a conversation about, well, the appetizers weren't that great. Well, the ambiance kind of sucked. You're not having those conversations at the best restaurants. Why? Because they know we got a great product. Our centerpiece here is phenomenal. We're going to make sure that you leave remembering the ribeye, but you're remembering that ribeye because you're not having conversations around, well, the whole vibe was off. Well, that mac and cheese we had wasn't that great. Not having that conversation, you're maximizing what you do best. That's what LSU is doing here in 2025. Now, going back to what I said about this formula, there's a lot of teams, I think, when we look at 2026, that if and when this works for LSU, I think we'll take a quick look at the yellow notepad and say, man, maybe that's the formula for us to follow. Like, I have no idea as to what Florida is going to bring back in 2026, but I know that DJ Lagway will have to play another year of college football. And if Florida gets to like that 8-9 win range and they bring Billy Napier back for another year, they're going to say, okay, how do we make sure we get to where we want to go? Because who knows what everyone else has in college football at the quarterback position. If we got a guy, let's go make sure we're not having second guesses about maximizing him in 2026. I think you could see Texas be in the same vein. Arch Manning, I think he's going to be back for 2 years. Or I think he's going to be back after this season, having 2 years as a starter in Austin. Pretty safe to assume that Steve Sarkisian is going to make sure he has what he needs around him. John Machir at Oklahoma. So we keep going down the line here. I think when LSU does this, it's going to unlock another way of thinking or maybe another way of doing things that some teams in the college football world right now, I'm sure, are privy to and thinking about, but it becomes much more in your face when LSU wins a national championship by doing it this way. So I know Ohio State, not technically in that 4-team model with how they won the national championship, but they followed a similar blueprint to what Michigan did the year before. Penn State's kind of in that vein this year. But I think that when that happens this year, a lot of people are going to follow suit with what LSU does this coming season, which, again, I'm telling you, winning the national championship. That's one part of this. But we got to make sure we address this too. We can't let everyone else off easy on this. When this happens, a lot of people are going to start asking the question, well, hey, Brian Kelly got himself a national championship. Where does he rank among the best coaches in college football? Weren't you just the person saying Brian Kelly couldn't win the big one? Weren't you just the person saying Brian Kelly wasn't good enough for the national championship? Couldn't win it all in big games? Did less with more? Wasn't that what you... Don't change your tune now, because they were saying this around Ryan Day. They said this about Jim Harbaugh for a long time. They said this about Kirby Smart for a while. Said this about Dabo Swinney for a long time. Very funny how one season, quite frankly, one game can change the entire narrative around a head coach. Brian Kelly's been one of the best coaches in college football. Now, I understand when you get that national championship, you get a little pass to a different area of the club. You get kind of behind the velvet rope, if you will. But understand now, Brian Kelly, just because he wins one game in the national title game, which would be a big win, doesn't mean that he's just a drastically different coach. He's been the same guy. I think what Austin Thomas, as the GM at LSU, has done for him with that roster and the continuity on the staff and bringing back Garrett Nussmeier, all those things cater to him, I think, having a better chance for success in 2025. But make no mistake, he's been one of the best coaches. But understand, that'll be the discussion that happens when Brian Kelly and when LSU win a national championship here in 2025. So that's one head coach that will have headlines around him here at the end of the season. It's going to be fun, man. I don't know that we could put more chips into the LSU basket when it comes to them being a team that's going to win it all in 2025. However, we also have a lot of chips on the Oklahoma side of things here in 2025 and what we think they're going to accomplish. Now, the schedule is brutal. No way around it. We've said a lot about John Matier and how we feel about him, but Brent Venables caught a lot of flack the last couple of years. And I get why, because in a place like Oklahoma, you can't win 6 games and have it be cool. Nobody's giving you daps as you go make a bowl game and lose. Nobody's okay with that. But understand now, the narrative that Brent Venables may or may not be cut out to be a head coach in college football, I think is ridiculous. And I think that narrative is just tucked into bed with a glass of water, maybe some NyQuil at the end of the 2025 season. I think when we look at Brent Venables as a head coach, we really only have one true season to evaluate him by, in my opinion. Because the first season, he gets to Norman, fired up. Everyone's excited about having their guy, I put their guy in air quotes, one of their own as the head coach in Norman. And his roster got bodied by the portal. Bodied. Now, no one's feeling sorry for him. I'm just saying, do you really want to count that as a year of like adequate sample size to evaluate Brent Venables as a head coach? You're responsible for the roster, but do we want to make sure that's like 100% how we're judging him? I would hold back some judgment there. Year 2, gets his feet underneath him, gets a roster, win 10 games. Okay, year 3, they enter into the toughest conference in college football, in my opinion, at least based on what NFL draft numbers say, in the SEC. OC gets hired away before the season in Jeff Lebby, and like it just went how it went. You win 6 games. It wasn't a fit with quarterback, whatever. But again, year 3, are we sure that's a fair sample size to assess Brent Venables? I'm not saying that you give him a pass, but I am saying the context around Brent Venables, I think, deserves a little bit more attention. Now, if we get to year 4 and they fall flat on their face and they win 6 games, okay, hey, the data is piling up here, BV. It's tough for me to make a case for you when it comes to what we're saying about the validity of him as a head coach. But I do just think it's worth noting Oklahoma as a whole in 2025, I think truly has more of what you need to be successful. And I don't know all the inner workings of how things go behind the curtain in Norman, but my feel around what Oklahoma is right now is they are allocating, again, my feeling is they're allocating more resources towards the roster building, roster construction side of things for Brent Venables. Like the report out there is that John Mateer is getting $3 million over 2 years from Oklahoma. That's committing to winning football. You go get Jim Nagy, a guy who is weighing NFL GM options. That's committing to roster construction. That's committing to what new college football is. So I think that in itself, being another step towards what Oklahoma is going to be here in 2025, long gone are the days where you can just evaluate a head coach on what they do on Saturdays from an X's and O's perspective. You got to evaluate what's their support. You got to evaluate what did they do via the portal. You got to evaluate all these different things as to what make them successful on Saturdays, all right? Because I think Brent Venables got the X and O side down. If you don't believe me, go look at his national title rings that he has both at Oklahoma and at Clemson, but I digress. I think Oklahoma's going to be really good this year. I think outside of the schedule, there's very little reason in my mind for a lot of concern with Oklahoma. Now, the schedule, you got to play it, so you can't just say forget the schedule, but like legitimately, defensively, why would you be worried about Oklahoma? Brent Venables running that side of the football, 60% production back. Everyone you talk to in Norman feels good about the defense. If you feel good about the defense and you know what the standard is for that defense with Brent Venables on that side of the ball, okay, like I'm going to go ahead and believe that good things are going to happen. Offensively, the main pushback you get is, well, but John Mateer hasn't really played this caliber of competition just yet. That's fair. I would hear that, no pushback there. But my thought is, one, how good that defense is supposed to be in Norman. In the clips I keep seeing, the reports I keep hearing out of Norman with what John Mateer is doing against that defense, sounds like he's hooping, right? So if John Mateer is hooping against that defense, probably cut out for it. Other thought here, I don't think you're squinting nearly as much to see John Mateer have success in this offense for Oklahoma than maybe you were a year ago. Because a year ago, I told you, Jackson Arnold, ton of ability. Y'all knew that. We knew that. There's no question there. However, different OC than he's used to working with. Replacing the whole offensive line. A lot more had to go right for him. And then you just threw in the CVS receipt of injuries that they had at wide receiver, and it just like, it piled up. John Mateer kind of for 44 total touchdowns last year, bro. I don't care if you're doing that on the JV level. I don't care if you're doing that in the, like 44 total touchdowns. You can play some ball now. Now, what will that translate to in the SEC? I don't know, but I have a hard time believing he goes from 44 to like the teens. That would, I think, shock everybody and would be something that none of us see coming. Now, there's a great book that I've told you all about several times on this show by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. Just like a great book for anyone, just regardless of where you are in life, really insightful. But the premise of the book is essentially the obstacles that you face in life, they look like obstacles. They may actually be the opportunity for success. They may actually be the reason why you have success later on. And so while that schedule right now for Oklahoma looks like an obstacle, it may actually be the proper filter to look at Brent Venables as a head coach and say, yeah, you know what? He's got some chops. Because you're going to be measuring yourself just about every single week if you're Oklahoma against some of the best rosters, best teams in college football. Like Michigan, say what you want about what they were a year ago. Sharon Moore's got a squad this year. Now, are they going to be a playoff team? Our very own Caden Smith thinks so, and I have a hard time pushing back too much on that narrative saying how they finished a year ago. So, like, the schedule in itself, Michigan, the rest of the SEC, it's going to be a good filter. And so I think most reasonable people understand, like, the standard at Oklahoma is to be a playoff team, to compete for national championships, to eventually compete for conference championships. But most reasonable people just want to see Oklahoma look good, right? You just want to see Oklahoma connect on some punches, look competitive in every single game, win some games, and show themselves a little bit here in Brent Venables' year 4. I think they're going to do that. And when you do that, we said earlier how Oklahoma, I think, is like trending in the right direction when it comes to resources and roster building and all those things. Guess what opens up the pockets even more? Proof of concept. When you prove in Brent Venables that, hey, I am a head coach in college football. I'm going to be your head coach in college football for Oklahoma for a while here. Like, give me what I need to support what I'm doing here. 9-3, which is what I think they'll go. That opens up the pockets. That activates the that makes you feel less anxious about giving to what Brent Venables is doing. And I think that's what you're going to get here. So 2026, if this whole conversation is around how we talk about Brent Venables after 2025, 2026 I think sets up real nice. Because there's no way the schedule is going to be as tough as it is going to be in 2025. Like there's no way you get that same draw, because there's no way it's worse than how it is right now. And I also think if you go win 9 games, I think John Machir comes back for another year. Dude's just a psychopath competitor from what we can gather. So you would imagine you get that close to the playoff, he's going to say, peace out, I'm gone to the league. No, I think he's going to probably make a lot of money, come back to Oklahoma, and put Oklahoma in a spot to then at that point in time have a playoff or bust mentality, compete for a national championship. And again, no more questions around Brent Venables, Your Honor, as a head coach. Just so we're all aligned there. That's what will be said after the 2025 season. Now, Nebraska fans, you have suffered even feels like a kind word. I mean, y'all have been through it, man. Y'all been through the ringer the last couple of years. From the Scott Frost era to the beginning of the Matt Rhule campaign to Scott Frost then saying at Media Days a couple of weeks ago at a Big 12 Media Days he took the wrong job. A guy who was a quarterback in Nebraska. I digress. What we're going to be saying after the 2025 season about Nebraska is, hey, Nebraska fans, you were never crazy. You were never crazy for doing the roster math and doing the, we were so close the last couple of seasons conversations and saying that should and eventually will equate to success on the football field. When I'm talking about success, I'm not talking about, we made a bowl game, won a bowl game, cool, great. I'm talking about like Nebraska legitimately flirting with a college football playoff berth. Now, hand up, I don't have Nebraska making the college football playoff this year, but hear me clearly. What Nebraska is going to be this year will dispel the feelings of we're so close, we're right there, why can't we get it? We should get it because we're so close. Because after a while, when you lose so many one-score games like you did during the Scott Frost era, like you did during year 1 of the Matt Rhule campaign, when you lose so many one-score games and you become so close so often, you start to just kind of settle with the idea of maybe that's all we are. Like maybe we are so close to you. Maybe that's our identity. The difference this year for me with Nebraska relative to previous years is you actually have the talent at quarterback, I think, relative to the rest of your schedule. Like, I look up and down Nebraska's schedule, I see a decisive quarterback advantage in 9 of your 12 games. You can make a case even for the USC game if you wanted to. I think some of y'all probably would make a push. I think you could make a conversation about the Michigan game if you wanted to. Like, there's a real discussion for Nebraska having a quarterback advantage in probably all but one game outside of the Penn State game with Drew Aller, because he's the most proven thing in that conference at quarterback. That's a big deal, man. I couldn't tell you the last time that was the case at Nebraska. The guy who touches the football every single play for your offense, and he's going to be better than their guy. You got a quarterback, you got a chance. You got a quarterback better than their guy, you have a definitive advantage, in my humble opinion. And it's not just having the quarterback in Dylan Raiola. It's the fact that he's going into year 2, and you have the proper things to support him, right? For the first time in a minute, because you've had talented guys before, but to have a talented quarterback with a head coach in year 3 in Matt Rhule, who, I mean, let's be real here. Death, taxes, Matt Rhule, year 3 doing big things. That's kind of how this sport has worked since he's been a head coach in college football. A true offensive coordinator who is a quarterback elevator. Last year, when Dylan Raiola was playing quarterback for Dana Holgorsen running the show, in an offense that wasn't even really Dana Holgorsen's verbiage or system or all that, completed 72% of his passes. Clayton Tune, over at Houston, was a 3-star prospect. Dana Holgorsen had him top 25 nationally as a passer. 3 straight years at Houston. I'm not saying Clayton Tune wasn't good in his own right, but the raw ingredients that Dylan Raiola has are very, very different than what Clayton Tune has. So if Daniel Holgorsen can do that with Clayton Tune at Houston, what's he going to do with Dylan Raiola at Nebraska in another year starting at the Big Ten level in a system where you beefed up that offense, quite frankly, a good bit via the portal? Got him some help on the offensive line. Rocco Spindler, Elijah Pritchett, Dane Key from Kentucky. Like they have done a lot around Dylan Raiola to make it to where at Nebraska offensively this year, it should be about Dylan Raiola. Like you're not having to solve for all these other deficiencies and then say, Raiola, can you make up for that? I think this year you're saying, Raiola, we built a lot around you. Now you go make the difference. Because that's why he committed to Nebraska, right? Like he put out the poem, and I know the poem's got some mixed reviews. The poem will age a lot better if Nebraska goes and makes the playoff this year, competes for a Big Ten title this year eventually while he's there. I digress. The point being, Dylan Raiola came to Nebraska to be the difference. Not to be the equalizer, not to get them back to winning 6-7 games, to be the true difference, to get them to compete at the highest level in the Big Ten. And I think the path itself also needs to be mentioned. I look at the schedule, no Ohio State, no Oregon, 4 true road games. It's teed up here for Nebraska. It truly is. And so what I just said at the top, I think Nebraska flirts with a playoff bid. I don't think they get in this year. I think they win 9 games. But even just flirting with the playoff would be validation for Nebraska fans, or I think it should be at least, because you've said for the longest time, we should compete for this year. We should be in that discussion this year. We should be in the mix this year. I don't think anyone in Nebraska is saying playoff or bust this year. I think they just want to see what they have on this roster and the things that they did a year ago, the so close, translate to now we're on the right side of so close. Now we have our roster talent, our talented quarterback, get us to where we should be in this conference, in the world of the Big Ten. And what that means for me is you then turn the page on what Nebraska football is in 2026. Okay, because 2025, I just said, you win 9 games, great. Guess what we're not talking about then? We're not talking about this team's got a storied tradition, a storied history. Man, this team, the bowl drought, they made a bowl game last year. Can they get past the bowl? We're not saying that anymore. We're saying, can Nebraska push and be a playoff team? Can Nebraska be a team that goes and wins the Big Ten? That's the new discussion for Nebraska. So the way it would reset the conversation and validate Nebraska fans, I think that's going to happen this year. I think Raiola will be a massive part of it. And I think what Matt Rhule and this entire organization in Lincoln has done to position themselves to do that, more power to them, kudos to them, and they'll reap the rewards of all that they've done behind closed doors for the last 2 years this upcoming season. Matt Rhule wasn't around for so close. He was for 2 years, I suppose, but he wasn't around for the so close snake-bitten years of Scott Frost. What's done in the dark in Lincoln will come to light in 2025. I can't wait to watch it. I think it's going to be a good time out there for that fan base that is rabid as all get out. Speaking of rabid, the good folks out there in Knoxville are borderline insane in the kindest way possible. Like, I mean, VFL is a very, very real thing for us being here in Nashville. We get to encounter a lot of y'all, so we appreciate y'all being dialed in and being subscribed. What we're going to say about Tennessee football after this season is that Josh Heupel is a Tier 1 coach in this sport. In my opinion, I think this is already the case. I think if we've been paying attention to how Josh Heupel has done things in Knoxville and where they've elevated to, I think this is already true. But especially this year, with the way the deck has been stacked against Josh Heupel, against Tennessee in so many ways, I think what they're going to do this year will once again like kind of illuminate this idea of, oh, wait, that guy that took over that program that was in, I say disarray is probably a kind way to phrase it. Program was down bad when he got there, now has them once again on the door of the college football playoff, winning 9 games. I think that will be illuminating for all of us here across the college football public. Because what I just said, Tennessee kind of got dealt a sucky hand this year, man. Like, I know the schedule's one thing. We'll talk about that. The schedule isn't all that bad. But to have your quarterback leave after spring practice, where the portal quarterback market is already, like, pretty dry for the most part, and to leave you in a situation where you got to not just go get a quarterback to add to your room, you have to get a quarterback, add him up to your offense, get him up to speed in your offense, which is already a pretty intense study, I have to believe, with how quick they go. And then you have to get him up to speed to go play in the SEC. First game in the SEC is against Georgia. Like, that's not a small ask. So that paired with the fact that you lose the SEC Offensive Player of the Year in Dylan Sampson, You lose a first-round draft pick on the defensive line in James Pierce. Like, there's a lot of things when you just say it out loud and you look at it on a piece of paper, the equation for Tennessee is not leaning in favor of Josh Heupel in Tennessee. Like, you have all these things break in the matter of one offseason. You're like, man, it's not really cause for a ton of optimism in Knoxville. It's not really cause for a ton of belief in what Josh Heupel's got going right now. But here's my thing. Since Josh Heupel's gotten to Tennessee, he has been an adapter. We say it a lot with the quarterback. Hendon Hooker's there, score a bunch of points, you win that way. Joe Milton takes over, it's a more gritty approach. You have to run the football more. You have to play better defense. Last year with Nico, first year starting quarterback. You got to figure it out. Win 4 games scoring 20 points. I beat that stat to death, but I think it's so revealing as to what Josh Heupel has done at Tennessee with figuring out how to win different ways. Like, the defense was the strength of that team a year ago. I'd say 2 years ago it might have been the strength of that football team. And so it's not just he's an adapter. What we're going to see this year from Josh Heupel is he's a builder. Like, we think about Josh Heupel kind of the same way I believe we talked about Steve Sarkisian a couple years ago. What do we say? Quarterback guy, dials up a great game plan. He's great on the call sheet. He can find ways to score and win, but when they go and win a lot of games this year and have themselves in the mix in November for a college football playoff berth, we're going to say, why is Tennessee in this spot with all the things that went left for them over the course of this offseason? Because Josh Heupel has been building this roster on the line of scrimmage in the shadows for the last couple of years. Like, even in 2022, they weren't up to par with what Alabama was up front. They weren't. Why'd they beat them this last year? Because they were better on the line of scrimmage from 2022 to 2024. They had been building that thing. They got better up front. They got better across the roster. They got better at key spots in the world of the SEC that you have to be better at. Like, Josh Heupel always knew, if I want to win at the highest level in this conference, I can't do it scoring 45 a game. I got to have a defensive line, and I got to be able to run the football at a high level. Now, he's run the football at a high level since he's been a head coach, make that clear. But the defense improving to where they are now, that's been a roster construction thing that Josh Heupel has been a massive part of. So when they go out and, I say it again, on the doorstep of the college football playoff this year, when they're in the mix again, it's going to be very revealing to say all these things were working against Tennessee, but they still found a way. Why? Because Josh Heupel is one of the best coaches in the sport, and I think that will be not up for debate at the end of this college football season. Now, again, I don't have them making the college football playoff, but just like we were talking about with a team like a Nebraska, like an Oklahoma, just to be knocking on the doorstep with all the deficiencies, all the reasons why they shouldn't be in the playoff, why they shouldn't be at that level, that to me, again, speaks volumes to what Josh Heupel has done since getting to Knoxville and the way they're trending. So once they do get those things underneath them, once they do have a more settled roster, a more settled quarterback situation, Tennessee will be once again in the mix in the year 2026. And for the record, I expect them to be in the mix here in 2025, even with all the nonsense that happened over the offseason for Tennessee. Now, what's going to be said about Alabama at the end of 2025? Because I think the discourse around Kalen DeBoer has gotten a little bit off the rails. Like, I think most reasonable people want to see what he does in year 2. But at the end of last year, when they lose to an Oklahoma, they lose to a Michigan threw for like double-digit yards, there was this feeling of, is Kalen DeBoer actually like the right guy at Alabama? Is Kalen DeBoer, and not saying he's on the hot seat, but there was some people that started that conversation of, what is Kalen DeBoer at Alabama? Is he a fit? I'm here to tell you, at the end of this college football season, no serious person will be split on Kalen DeBoer as Alabama's head coach. Now, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say he's going to be up there with Nick Saban. I didn't say build the guy a statue. I fully expect, though, Alabama to be a college football playoff team here in 2025. Top 3 defense in America, more than likely. They will get what I would categorize as like enough from Ty Simpson. I don't know if Ty Simpson's going to win the Heisman Trophy, but I think you get more consistency, more ability to run your offense. You just get more from him to win football games than you had from Jalen Milroe. And I think the culture is going to be better, like the winning culture. Not saying Alabama had a toxic locker room or anything like that, but Alabama was inconsistent, which to me was reflective of the locker room in itself, maybe not having the winning habits they needed to have to go beat a Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, Michigan, and teams that they probably should have, maybe would have in other eras of the Alabama football program, beaten. Making the college football playoff is awesome. I don't think that Alabama necessarily wins it all in 2025. They could. It wouldn't shock me. College football is wide open this year, so hear me. But understand, them making the playoff and not winning a national championship, you would get two reactions. All right, one reaction would be from the crazies. The guy that's got the Alabama logo as his Twitter profile picture, has something about Blitz, Bama Blitz in their bio. The crazies would say, well, they don't win the national championship. That's what we expect. Not good enough. Is Kalen DeBoer the right guy? You're not Nick Saban. Are we sure Kalen DeBoer is the right guy? And that would just be nonsense. That'd be noise. Do not listen to that reaction, because the second reaction is going to be from reasonable people. Reasonable people will say this. Yes, winning a national championship is the standard here in Tuscaloosa. No way around it. That has to happen. Kalen DeBoer has to do that at Alabama over the course of his career. However, we also, as reasonable people, understand the greatest college football coach of all time is who we just had as our head coach. There's no other Nick Saban that exists in the world. There's no other Nick Saban coaching college football right now somewhere else that would do a better job than a one Kalen DeBoer, given our set of circumstances. Also, reasonable people, which I actually think that the fan base in Tuscaloosa has more of than maybe what gets credit for, winning a national championship is really freaking hard. It's way harder now in the 12-team model. We keep saying this, but before it was win your conference, win 2 games, you're a national champion. Now it's win your conference, hopefully, just get in the 12-team playoff, win 3 or 4 games against any number of matchups, and then maybe you find yourself winning the national championship. That's a very different discussion. That's a very different path. So much of winning the national championship, I think in modern college football, in the 12-team era and potentially beyond that, we'll see how many teams they go to. That's another discussion for another time, is going to come down to what your draw is. All right, now, we could do a whole segment on that. Maybe we will in the future. But the point being, when Kalen DeBoer takes this team to the college football playoff, there should be a massive exhale, a massive realization of, okay, we got the right guy. Maybe it doesn't look like how it used to look with reeling off national titles every year with Nick Saban. Maybe it doesn't look like how it used to look with Nick Saban just donkey barbecuing people every single time on the sideline that they do something wrong. However, we got the right guy who is going to take Bama where it needs to be. A guy who has a track record of winning, a guy who in his second year with a new quarterback got us to the college football playoff in the toughest conference in America. Like, okay, we got a guy. We very much so see where this is going. Because I think that's one of the biggest things in the 12-team era. Like, you just got to see the work being done and understand that it's going to eventually translate. It's kind of like in elementary school math. You would get credit just for showing your work, right? Like, JD, what was the answer? Apples. No, it was 17, but you showed your work. You get some points there, right? Like, you see what I'm saying? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a win the national championship situation. It has to be a, hey, I see where this is going. We see the roster being built. We see the culture being better. We see the recruiting classes being in good shape. That's a big part of what the playoff run, I think, for Alabama, the playoff berth would mean. Alabama right now, top 10 recruiting class in all of college football. I think them making the playoff would equate to them finishing in the top 10, if not top 5 on National Signing Day. At the quarterback position, who's to say what it looks like next year for Alabama? But Keelan Russell is out there throwing darts during fall camp. From what I understand, I have a hard time seeing him sitting on the bench for another year. I think he's probably your guy this time next year. We see where this is going. We see the arrow pointing up. We see what Alabama football is going to be once they totally get their sea legs under Kalen DeBoer. Takes a second to get totally situated. So, again, no serious person will have the discussion of, is Kalen DeBoer right for Alabama? Is he really? No. They make the playoff this year. You understand what he's doing. You see where it's going. You see the recruiting, all that. And Alabama is once again in good shape with one of the best head coaches in the sport in charge of that whole thing in Kalen DeBoer. Man, I love those Aflac commercials, dude. I'm hoping we still get Coach Prime and Nick Saban on the Aflac commercials. I don't know if they'll do another iteration of those. You'd like to think. But this next thing that people are going to be saying after the 2025 season pertains to Colorado and Coach Prime. It wasn't just a Shedeur and Travis thing for Colorado, is what we're going to be saying at the end of next year. All right, because Deion Sanders, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, really good football coach. Notice what I said, football coach. Not just recruiter, not just good father who has a talented kid as his son who plays quarterback, like a good football coach. Because I think the narrative is, Well, Shedeur's gone to the league. Travis gone to the league. Those are big losses. There's no way around that. Those are big losses. Right now, BetMGM has the over-under win total for Colorado at 5.5 wins on the season. So Vegas is saying right around a bowl team. I think Colorado will be much better than that. But Colorado last year went out and won 9 football games. 9 games. Now, Shedeur played a massive part of that. Travis Hunter winning the Heisman Trophy played a massive part of that. But like Shedeur and Travis Hunter were also on the team that won 4 games the year before. And they played well during those seasons as well. It wasn't like Shedeur just massively, elevated his game from year 1 to year 2 in Boulder. He got better. It wasn't like he just did a 180. Same thing with Travis Hunter. The roster talent got better from 4-8 to 9 wins. I think it's going to keep trending up. Line of scrimmage got better from 4-8 to 9 wins. I think it's going to keep trending up. And I keep saying this, but Deion Sanders, by nature of how he's not hitting the portal as hard as he was the last couple of years, he's telling you he feels good about this roster. By his actions, he's telling you, I feel good about my guys. Like last year, Colorado had a top 10 sack rate in America. We were talking about what are they going to be on defense going into last season. Pretty good on defense. Think they're going to keep trending in the right direction. It also should be discussed like what they're replacing Shedeur, Sanders, and Travis Hunter with. Whether it's Caden Salter or Julian Lewis, either one of those dudes, whoever wins that job for Colorado, going to be talented. Going to be very talented. The wide receiver room for Colorado, is it Travis Hunter, Blitnikoff Award winner good? I don't know, but they got what they need. And Omarion Miller, Joseph Williams, transfer from Tulsa. They got some guys in that room, okay? Give the staff a lot of credit, too, that Deion Sanders has assembled. Like Pat Shurmur dialing it up last year, allowing Shedeur Sanders to progress from what he was the year before and get even better, and to maximize what that wide receiver room was, and to try and help that offensive line, to manufacture a run game. Like, he's still the offensive coordinator. He's going to get better another year in the system. Like, Deion Sanders has done a really great job, not just putting together a roster, but putting together like an overall like program, as we say on this show. Culture, standards, how they scout and evaluate talent in the portal, how they do things. Like, this is a good football team. They were resilient last year, too. I want to say this. They lost to Nebraska, and a lot of us, myself included, waited with bated breath. Okay. Lost to Nebraska. No real shame in that. That's a good football team in their own right. But how do you respond when you get punched in the mouth, knocked down, and let's call it embarrassed? It was embarrassing for them a year ago when they lost to Nebraska. Was fully ready to see Colorado pack up shop. Woe is me. A lot of transfers, are they really meshing together? That was not the case at all. At all. I expect that culture to take another step forward. More resilience and more from that side of the operation from Deion Sanders. So my point being here, once that happens, we're going to all understand, oh, yeah, Shedeur Sanders was phenomenal. Travis Hunter was phenomenal. But Colorado didn't drop off a cliff and miss a bowl game. Colorado was once again in the mix in the Big 12 title race. Would it be that ridiculous to have Colorado win the Big 12 this year? I mean, last year, Arizona State was picked to finish last in the conference, and they won the thing. Colorado won 9 games a year ago with the same head coach, with the same OC back, with the portal ads they made. I don't think it'd be ridiculous to say that. Now, I haven't picked them to win the conference, so I don't want to speak out of both sides of my mouth, but I am just saying, if they got it done, it should surprise none of us. Should surprise none of us, and them in themselves being in that upper tier and being in the race in November for the Big 12 title game, for the Big 12 championship, which would put them in the college football playoff, that I think needs to be discussed, needs to be understood. That's a Deion Sanders thing. When things change underneath you and when you have different personnel and you still have results that stay in a similar place, that's coaching. That's what you've built. That's Deion Sanders. It wasn't just a Shedeur and Travis thing. Truly, Deion Sanders is a good football coach, and we're all going to get that clarified for us here in 2025, and I'm ready for that, man. Very much so ready for that. All right, we told you, it's game week, baby. We got college football being played this Saturday. Caden Smith and I juiced for this one, man. It's week 0. We respect, we honor, we appreciate, we value week 0. All right, in week 0, the game of week 0, to get us started, Kansas State, Iowa State, Aviva Stadium, Dublin, Ireland, ESPN, noon Eastern. K-State favored by 3. All right, across the, I don't know if it's across the pond, but it's international. Farmageddon. Hear me clearly. I don't think it's all that crazy that we could see one of these two teams winning the Big 12 because the Big 12 is wide the heck open. You could see one of these teams being a college football playoff participant. These are the two model citizens college football in my mind. I don't go super, super heavily to the portal. Both bring back quarterbacks, both coaches that like build cultures. These are the two model citizens of college football in Iowa State and Kansas State. This game is going to, I'm so fired up we have this to start the college football season. Also, how about it being a conference game? Like, how different did it feel a year ago when Georgia Tech beat Florida State, and we're like, not only was that big for Georgia Tech because of the fact that they beat a team that everyone picked to make the playoff, but Georgia Tech got an ACC win. Same thing for this team, for these teams, I should say, for K-State or Iowa State. Get a conference win to start the year in Dublin? I'll leave it at that. Big key in this game. Major, major key. Shout out DJ Khaled. Avery Johnson has got to play efficient football. Now, that is boring to say. It doesn't necessarily make a bunch of headlines. You're going to hear everyone and their mama say something like that. But here's why I think that's so important. Last year, Kansas State, a smooth 6-1 when Avery Johnson completes 60% of his passes. It should be noted, a year ago, Avery Johnson, it was his second year at Kansas State. It was his first year, though, in a new offense. Now, he committed and had a full year under Colin Klein, who's now the OC at A&M. He hadn't had a year in this offense yet. Last year was his first time doing it. So now, full second off season, I should say. How does that look? Does he look more comfortable? Because when you watch Kansas State offensively, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of motions. There's a lot put on on Avery Johnson's plate to make the Kansas State offense go correctly with the RPOs and the run. Like there's a lot on his plate, a lot of decisions to be made during the snap. Where is he at in his progress in that? Because I think the inefficiencies you saw last year were the learning curve for Avery Johnson in my mind. Like the processing the defense at the rate he needs to process it at within this offense with what they ask of him. This is so crucial for him to be efficient because Kansas State, they got some guys to get the football to. All right, Jace Brown, I think, is quietly one of the better wide receivers in all of the Big 12. Dylan Edwards, he's a running back, but they're going to line him up all over the place and use him in the jet sweep game, use him in the screen game. If Avery Johnson runs on time and is efficient, there's a reason why K-State is so successful in the win-loss column when he's on his P's and Q's. So Avery Johnson playing efficient football, we're going to know real early if this is a game that Kansas State is going to be able to play their style in. What I mean by that is I think Kansas State would like to score probably in the 30s if they can make that happen. That being the reality would mean that Avery Johnson isn't turning the football over, isn't stalling out drives because we miss on a easy throw on 3rd and 4. Like, that can't be the reality for Kansas State. Can't be the reality for them if they want to win this football game. Now, Iowa State, they're in an interesting spot. Rocco Beck, program guy through and through, one of the best quarterbacks in the country and definitely one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, loses not one but 2 1,000-yard receivers from a year ago, both gone to the league. How do they reinvent the offense for A1 Rocco Beck? Now, I say reinvent the offense. You don't have to really reinvent so much like where you're going to attack a defense, but like you do have to reinvent where that production came from, in my mind. I think for Kansas State, when you look at what they are defensively, they're pretty gettable in the pass defense category. 85th in America a year ago. To me, this game comes down to Rocco Beck just being the adult in the room here. All right, hey, new group on the perimeter a little bit. Some guys that maybe aren't as calloused when it comes to playing college football. Rocco Beck's got to be steady hand, calming presence, all that, and allow those guys to play their best in this scenario. I think when you look at what they're going to be offensively, it's really crucial for Iowa State to win the early downs here. They want to play like the corn-fed style of football. You know what I'm saying? They want to live in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1. And when that happens, if you're Kansas State, you have to commit more attention to the ground game. Like if I'm Iowa State, I understand you want to throw the ball down the field with Rocco Beck, but I would lean on those big boys up front. Iowa State brings back 3 of their starting 5 offensive linemen. Lean on those guys. Lean on them, and when Kansas State overcommits, then you can manufacture some explosives. A big part of this for Iowa State is going to be the tight end game, okay? Because when they line up in 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, that screams to a defense, we're running the ball. We're running the ball. All right, we got 2 big boys out here instead of receivers. We're running the football. When you go play action off of a look like that after running the ball so many times, you can dice someone down the middle, Rocco Beck hitting on that, and Kansas State overcommitting on those kind of situations. That's going to be, I think, how Iowa State can apply the pressure to a Kansas State. So winning on early downs for Iowa State, going back to my point here, I'd like to see them in like that 3.5 yards of carry range, 4 yards of carry range. That would be setting up those explosive plays down the field. And at that point, you put the pressure maybe on Avery Johnson to make a couple mistakes, to force a little bit, to get ahead of himself and play outside of himself. That'd be crucial for Iowa State. That's how they win this football game. For Kansas State, I think you got to win the early quarters. Because I told you, Rocco Beck breaking in some new talent on the perimeter. They don't want to play this game in the upper 20s, low 30s. They would like to, again, control the clock, make Avery Johnson stand on the sideline with a towel and some Gatorade, and have him watch them put together a 12-play drive that takes 7 minutes off the clock. If I'm Kansas State, we have the experience, more or less, with the skill players, with our quarterback, and I shouldn't say with the quarterback because Rocco Beck's super experienced. The experience with the quarterback, with his skill players, I should say, with the Jace Brown I already mentioned. They're going to, I think, try and be aggressive to force on a Rocco Beck to just what I said, try and press a little bit on his end, try and push the ball downfield, which isn't really what I think the Iowa State offense in itself, right now at least, is built to do. I think it's going to be a little bit of some Bambi legs for the Iowa State offense if they get into that situation. You know what I'm saying? Like, not totally stable, little bit unsure of themselves. I don't think that's the kind of game they want to play. So what I just said, if we get to the second quarter and it's 14-zip Kansas State, I don't think a Matt Campbell team is capable of panicking, but I do think you could see them start to press a little bit, get outside of their game offensively, and that in itself I think would very much so favor a Kansas State. So what worries me in this game, what's going to decide my pick here, the Iowa State ground defense allowed 5.5 yards a carry a year ago. Not great. Not great. Now, here's the deal. People can change. I think Iowa State will be much better defensively this year, but how much better do you get from last year, averaging 5.5 yards a carry allowed, to this upcoming season, the first game of the year, when you're playing in a different country? Does that get fixed in week 0? I don't know that it does, especially against an offense now in Kansas State that what I just said is going to be very dynamic, going to give you a lot of different looks. To me, the difference in this game is the cat and mouse of Avery Johnson on the ground, Dylan Edwards in the option game. I think that's going to give Iowa State a little bit of trouble. I think this is a close game to a degree, but I do think that Kansas State wins 27-21, so they cover the spread, get their first win in conference play in week 0 in a foreign country. I just think it's too much Avery Johnson. I think they're too dynamic. I think there's too many ways for them to attack Iowa State for me to feel good about the Iowa State offense in this spot going back and forth with a year 2 Avery Johnson as a starting quarterback. So, let me know your thoughts, but we got Kansas State winning and covering for the first game of the college football season. Dublin, Ireland, man. I cannot wait. I cannot wait, man. Like, we're back. We are all the way back. All the way back. And I was thinking, too, to kind of round up the show, what are some things that just make you realize that college football is back, that we made it. We made it through the dark and dreary reality that is the offseason in college football. To me, when Reese Davis in week 1 hits that opening monologue, like with a geographical tag to it, you know what I'm saying? Like the opening monologue for game day starts, Reese Davis is waxing poetic and just giving you bars, but when he hits on the banks of the Olatangi, or when he hits in College Station, he names a certain place, like that just speaks to my soul and lets me know, okay, we're home. The portal's closed, signing day's behind us, fall camp's behind us, like we made it. We all the way made it. Other thing that reminds me we're back or lets me know we're back, whenever Gus Johnson is just losing his ever-loving mind. If you haven't yet listened to the Huddle podcast, which is a podcast-only product on the Hard Count feed, Spotify, Apple, get your podcast wherever, Caden Smith does a killer Gus Johnson impression. We'll have to break that out for you this week. But whenever Gus Johnson's talking about saying, drops back, fires, like whenever we get that, dude, and he's just losing his mind, Jeremiah Smith, money on the rise. Like whenever that hits, dude, it's going to be, we missed you. Like sing an old friend. It's been a while. We haven't kept in touch super well, but now that we're back together, now that I got Gus Johnson losing his marbles on my television screen, good to see you again. Quarterbacks being announced for different teams as the starter. Sain announced at Ohio State. Steve Angeli announced at Syracuse. QB1 reveal season always has a nice little momentum into the upcoming year. You know, you can kind of start to put into Sharpie what you had in pencil on the depth charts. Okay, Sain at Ohio State. Got it. We'll see what Notre Dame is. We're getting news on them here probably in the next few days, knowing our luck, few hours. That always tells me a lot that, okay, we're here. People are setting rosters and game planning and setting depth charts. We're here. Also, like game week hype videos, anyone from the creative department across college football, one, doing the Lord's work. Two, this is your time to really shine. We've been waiting for a while now. Been waiting for some fall camp cut-ups as you lead into the Texas-Ohio State game. A lot of y'all throw our voiceovers in there, so we appreciate you for that. But whenever we get a game week hype video, we're back. We're here. We're hyping up a game that's going to happen here in the next 7 days. And then finally, maybe most importantly is we're back whenever we start fully talking ourselves into our team being awesome this year. You know what I mean? Like, you sort of danced around it all year long. Maybe in March you question if your team is going to make a bowl game. Maybe by the month of May you're like, I could see us winning 8. By the time like late August, early September hits, we're making the college football playoff. I don't care what happened last year. I don't care who we lost. I don't care what our head coach said at a press conference. I don't care what the message board says. We are here this year. I know what I said in the month of March. I take it all back. College football is here. I'm diving all the way into the pool that is my school's Kool-Aid. I'm embracing it. I've walked myself through the schedule and told myself where our wins are at, where we're going to shock the world. I know something that they don't know, so therefore my team, we're winning it all this year, and it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to have happen. Wonderful place to be at, emotionally, psychologically, and heck, physically, week 1 for those of y'all that are going to some games. So let me know which ones we missed, but we're back. Y'all are back. We never left, but to have college football truly be here for a game week, it's euphoric. Euphoric in every single sense. Kind of like I said on a Twitter post that I have out right now, at PicKell, Instagram, Twitter. I made it sound like it was like a single that I dropped. I tweeted out over the weekend, whenever like game week for college football rolls around, it's like the first leg stretch after a long car ride. Like it's familiar, it's euphoric, it's long overdue, and it feels right. That's us heading into a game week here for this college football Saturday, week 0. Make sure you're locked in right here on the On3 YouTube channel. College football, nothing but college football year-round. College football season is here. For Caden Smith on the 1s and 2s, for myself, JD PicKell, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We'll see y'all next time.